A trans person is someone who feels that the gender that they were assigned at birth is not how they identify. This can be very uncomfortable for individuals and in fact can cause major psychological problems. Transitioning is a journey that individuals take to get to a stage where they feel more comfortable in who they are and how they present themselves to society as a whole. Like many journeys, there are different routes and different paths. No one size fits all.
Historically, there's been a shortage of gender medicine specialists throughout the United Kingdom. There are complicated reasons for that, but much of it is because there has never been a properly established training regime. The Royal College of Physicians are now attempting to address that and have a training regime starting in association with a leading university, and that's planned to launch in 2020. It is hoped that this will give rise to a large number of appropriately trained doctors, nurses, psychologists and other clinicians who can deal with the ever-increasing number of patients presenting to UK services and indeed all over the world. It's sometimes felt by employers that it would be stressful or difficult making a change of gender role. And of course, this is a misapprehension. Employers are thinking, I would find it difficult if I had to start living my life as a woman or living my life as a man. But what they haven't thought through is that for their employee, this person has been doing exactly that for a large number of years and at last is able to live as themselves with all the benefits that go with that.
While it's really important that trans employees are covered by insurance at the company, it's also important to make sure that you're creating an inclusive and accepting environment within your workplace. Trans people face a lot of discrimination almost anywhere they go, so take those extra steps to make sure that the culture in your workplace is inclusive, and it will really make a huge difference to the lives of your trans employees as well as the rest of the team.
In order to make it more inclusive, it's important to ensure that trans issues are covered in your workplace policy. Having a clear anti-discrimination and human rights policy is incredibly important to make sure current and future employees know that your workplace values diversity and human rights.
A policy of this kind could include making sure trans employees are allowed to use facilities based on their gender identity, and that they're always being addressed by the right name, the right pronouns, and that their gender identity and history is respected and accepted. This means being mindful of language and questions that might be deemed inappropriate or uncomfortable.
It's also important to be mindful that not all your employees might be comfortable with fully gendered language, especially if they're identifying outside the male and female binary. Addressing your staff in a more gender-neutral way might be beneficial for everyone. For example, instead of ladies and gentlemen, you could say dear staff or everyone.
It's also important that the policy is followed and enforced if there are issues that come up. Having the greatest policy and cover in place is a great step, but your employees need to know that issues will be addressed and that they can come to you if there's anything that makes them feel unsafe or if a situation has happened that makes them feel discriminated against.
In order to make sure your workplace is inclusive, we strongly encourage you to consult with organizations that deal with transgender issues, as they will be able to advise and offer trainings to your workplace. Trainings are incredibly important to make sure your staff is getting the right information and is learning about these issues from the right people.
Over the past 5 years, we've seen an increase in people engaging with organisations like Stonewall to make their workplaces more inclusive of LGBT identities, but also other identities that sit outside that. Research shows that organisations that are inclusive of LGBT identities can not only attract better talent, but retain it. If your organisation is new to LGBT inclusion or is a well-established D&I strategy, there are still some key things and some top tips that you ought to consider in creating an inclusive workplace. The foundations for all work is in your policies and making sure that they are inclusive of LGBT identities. So making sure that family leave is applicable to same-sex couples, for example, but also thinking about those specific policies that affect identities that fall under the LGBT umbrella, such as transitioning at work. These are really important to give a structure to colleagues, managers and HR, but also to let trans people who are working for your organisation know that their identities are valid and they are a respected part of your workforce.
It's great that people are starting to be able to talk about gender and identity. However, one of the problems that we've seen is that because there are only 12 gender identity clinics in the UK, accessing specialist services is very difficult. At Cigna, we're here to help people on their journey. The NHS is great, but in many instances, there are very long waiting lists. We can step in and help start the transitioning journey for our customers.